Students, have you ever wondered how living organisms keep their species alive? Yes, you are thinking in the right direction. Organisms reproduce to keep their species alive. In this video, we are going to learn how organisms reproduce. After the completion of the video, you will be able to describe the significance of reproduction, list the modes of reproduction in living organisms, explain how unicellular organisms reproduce by fission. Reproduction is a process by which individuals produce new individuals of the same kind. Now, I have a question for you. If organisms reproduce to keep their species alive, then what happened with dinosaurs? How did they become extinct? Didn't they reproduce? Students, answer to this question lies in another aspect for survival of species. Environment can change drastically, and this change would not be under the control of organisms. This drastic change in environment can kill a species. Scientists believe that the earth was hit by a meteorite, and this was the reason that all the species of dinosaurs were killed. Now, another question. Human beings evolved from apes. Reproduction produces individuals of similar type. So, how do features of organisms change with evolution? Evolution is a very long process. It takes place in millions of years. Organisms live in a very well-defined environment. During reproduction, these organisms produce body design features that are suitable for the environment. For example, giraffe has developed long neck to eat leaves high up on the trees. Now, what is the importance of DNA copying in reproduction? DNA copying is the replication of DNA at the time of cell division. It is important for transfer of genes of the parents to the next species of the same kind. DNA determines the body design of an individual. When DNA copy is created, there is some variation. It is not exact copy. This variation helps species to survive in adverse conditions. Now, we are going to discuss the types of reproduction. There are two types of reproduction: asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction is the one in which a single individual gives rise to the new individual. In such type of reproduction, gametes are not formed and the new individual is identical to parent. Such type of reproduction is extremely useful as a means of rapid multiplication. That means the population of organisms can increase rapidly. This type of reproduction is adopted by lower organisms. Now, sexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, two individuals, that is, one male and one female, are needed to give rise to new individual. Gametes are formed and the new individual is genetically similar but not identical to parents. That is, there are some variations. It is useful to generate more variation in species, and this variation helps species to survive in adverse conditions. Sexual reproduction is adopted by higher organisms. Students, asexual reproduction can occur in many ways: by binary fission, budding, spore formation, fragmentation, regeneration, and vegetative reproduction. This vegetative reproduction can also occur in many ways: by stem, by underground stem, by leaves, by roots. We are going to study them one by one. Now, we are going to discuss fission. Fission in simple terms is the splitting of a cell into two or more cells. Each small cell is known as daughter nuclei. If the cell divides into two, it is called binary fission. If it divides into many cells, it is called multiple fission. Binary fission can take place in favorable conditions. Multiple fission can take place in unfavorable conditions also. Binary fission takes place in microorganisms like amoeba. Multiple fission takes place in amoeba as well as in plasmodium. Now, what are favorable conditions? That is like availability of food, moisture, etc. Now, let us understand binary fission in amoeba. Binary fission in amoeba starts with the nucleus dividing itself into two and move to opposite side of the cell. Look at this parent cell. The nucleus divides into two and then it moves to opposite side of the cell, as well as the cytoplasm constricts itself in the middle to split into two. Now, let us understand the multiple fission in plasmodium. In multiple fission, the cell divides into many, that is, many daughter nuclei are formed. In multiple fission, a protective layer covering is formed which is called a cyst. This develops over the cell. Then the nucleus divides into many more nuclei which become the core of many daughter cells contained in the cyst. Look at this. Many daughter nuclei are formed. After that, the cyst breaks, the daughter cells are released. So, the key differences between binary fission and multiple fission are: binary fission is a way of asexual reproduction that produces two parts from an organism or a single entity. Multiple fission is a way of asexual reproduction that produces many parts from a single entity. In binary fission, nucleus divides into two nuclei. However, in multiple fission, nucleus divides into many nuclei. Binary fission takes place in favorable conditions. However, multiple fission takes place in unfavorable conditions. Next type is budding. Budding can be seen in certain fungi and multicellular organisms. In budding, the parent cell or body gives out a lateral outgrowth which is called a bud. Then the nucleus divides and one of the daughter nuclei passes into the daughter cell. The bud grows in size while being attached to the parent body. It then gets separated from the parent by the formation of a wall. It then falls off and germinates into a new individual. In budding, there is a formation of daughter cells of unequal sizes that later grow to adult size. Students, in case of hydra, the daughter hydra even develops mouth and tentacles develop around the mouth before being detached from the parent body. Next type is spore formation. Spore formation occurs in both unicellular as well as multicellular organisms. This process takes place in plants. In spore formation, the parent plant produces hundreds of reproductive units called spores in its spore case. When this spore case of the plant bursts, these spores travel in air and land on food or soil. Here, they germinate and produce new plants. Example of such type is fungi like Rhizopus or Mucor. Next type is regeneration. This is an example of regeneration in planaria. Simple organisms such as Hydra and Planaria are capable of producing new individuals through the process of regeneration. Here you can see from a body part a completely new individual has been formed. Simple organisms can utilize this method of reproduction as their body is made of similar kind of cells in which any part of their body can be formed by growth and development. However, complex organisms have organ system level of organization. All the organ system of their body work together as an interconnected unit. They regenerate their lost body parts such as skin, muscles, blood, etc. However, they cannot give rise to new individuals through regeneration. Another type of asexual reproduction is fragmentation. Fragmentation is a type of asexual reproduction in which an entirely new organism is formed from a fragment of the parent. It occurs in multicellular organisms whose body organization is fairly simple, such as starfish, fungi, lichens, and Spirogyra. Students, the filament of Spirogyra upon maturation breaks into small pieces or fragments which grow into new individual. Now, what is the difference between regeneration and fragmentation? Beta, both regeneration and fragmentation are the types of asexual reproduction. They both stand for the same meaning, that is growth of an organism from a part of the body. Regeneration is mainly associated with animals, whereas fragmentation is mainly associated with plants. So this is one of the difference. Regeneration is of two types. In the first type, a part of the body that gets broken off or cut is regenerated. For example, lizards cast off their tails to escape predators and then regenerate them. The other type of regeneration involves the capacity to give rise to an entire organism from a cut part. It is seen in small invertebrates such as Planaria and Hydra. Fragmentation is also a mode of asexual reproduction. It is the unintentional cutting up of the body of an organism, which each grows into different organisms. It is most commonly seen in some algae. Next is vegetative reproduction. There are many plants in which parts like roots, stem, and leaves develop into new plants under appropriate conditions. Let us look at them one by one. Vegetative reproduction by stem. Runners are stems that grow horizontally above the ground. They have nodes where buds are formed and then these buds grow into new plants. Next is vegetative reproduction by leaf. But a vegetative reproduction by leaf can occur in plants like Bryophyllum and Begonia. Bryophyllum is the one in which leaf margin is notched and notches bear adventitious buds. Whenever leaf is detached and it falls on soil, one new plant can arise from each notch. Then there is vegetative reproduction by roots. New plants will grow out of swollen modified roots called tubers. Buds develop at the base of the stem and then grow into a new